Yeah, so my brother has started making balloon animals, and he said, Seb, would you like a squid? And I was like, of course I'd like a squid. So here we go. There's a squid.
Holy shit, that's brilliant.
And now
They're your friends.
and then I'm doing a Ecosoc thing. But there you go. This is the spider that my brother made for me the other day as well.
Oh, cool.
You are talented, Nick.
Just follow tutorials. You haven't got a talented.
Yeah. But yeah. Shall we begin then?
Damn.
All right. Let me just get that up. All right. Really, I should have. What have I done now? Hang on. We're already running into the technical difficulties. I'm trying to get the. It's because it's on the other one, not Microsoft thing. All right, there we go. Let's screen share. Let me make that full screen. Oopsie. Oh! There we go. That was no faff at all.
Oh.
All right, so these these are some funny comics that my mother showed me. So the way this talk was going to work is that we were going to introduce some parasites, go through the life cycle, say why they're called, stuff like that. And then I was going to explain what the images are before I showed them, because I know some people are icked out, but I doubt either of you are particularly icked out by stuff. So I was going to explain them, but do you guys mind me showing icky stuff? Are you? No, no one's too fussed. All right, so thought we'd kick off with the definitions. So what is a parasite? A parasite is an organism who lives on or inside of another organism, and that organism then benefits whilst the host organism is harmed. And then the host is the organism the parasite lives on. They can be in two forms, an ectoparasite or an endoparasite. Endoparasites are found inside their hosts, while an ectoparasite is found outside. And now this has to be the single coolest biological word that I've ever come across. A hyperparasite is a parasite that parasitizes a parasite. So there you go. So that's like wasps. They'll lay their eggs in the larvae of other parasitic wasps, which is really cool. So part one, butts and bits. This is all our little butt parasites. So this is one of my favorites, the pearlfish. So there are many types of pearlfish, and they're usually in symbiosis, not always parasitism. They can just live inside clams or pearl. They live inside clams sometimes, which is why they got the name pearlfish from. So most famous example of this is them living inside of a sea cucumber's anus, and they'll shelter inside of a sea cucumber and leave to feed at night and come back in. Sometimes it's kind of commensalism. The sea cucumber isn't too fussed to have a fish living in its butt. Sometimes the pearlfish will eat its gonads and basically just neuter the fish, or they'll have a fight where a female comes inside of the sea cucumber with a male, and then they'll mate, and then another male will come in, and then they'll have a fight inside the sea cucumber's bum, and it just leads to some mad hijinks. Yeah, it's pretty messy. And then this leads to some ridiculous stuff like 15 pearlfish inside of some poor sea cucumber that's it's like a whole ecosystem with its bum. And there's some photos of that, lovely little things. So yeah, the sea cucumbers don't typically want something living that long in their bum. So they'll close their anus and kind of try and hold them off. But the thing is, they also need to breathe through their bums. So eventually they have to breathe, and they'll open up, and then the old pearlfish will just slither on in. This was an interesting one. It's the crab neutering barnacle. It's a particularly strange one. Its life cycle is so completely alien that it almost sounds made up. So basically, it's a barnacle that essentially lives parasitically inside of a crab, which is really strange. So they basically they land on the antennae of a crab, and then basically inject herself out of her exoskeleton into the crab, which she basically just turns herself into a hypodermic needle rather, and injects herself into the crab. And then she'll travel through the crab, sticks around the intestines, and basically spreads out these tendrils to absorb the crab's nutrients. When she's grown a bit, she'll pop out like this little knob through the abdomen of the crab, and then the males enter this. But the males are absolutely tiny. They're like tiny compared to her, but then they basically exist just to fertilize her. They're basically just exist to just, stick the sperm in. So once these males have come in and embedded themselves, she'll lay hundreds of eggs a day. And what happens is they basically, the barnacle will, all of these eggs are laid under the crab. They come through the hole that she's made. But the thing is that it also releases chemicals that takes over this crab's brain, making the crabs care for the barnacles as if they were the crab's own eggs under the crab. Also, the males then basically become females. They sort of they get the enlarged the bit below and basically take on some of the female anatomy and also care for young like they were a female, which of course the male crabs don't do. And they're also prevented from molting so that they don't get rid of the egg sac, and they're castrated just for good measure because why not? And then this is that. So this form up here is basically the original larvae. It injects itself out of its own exoskeleton, and then spreads through the crab. I think this is either the male or the larval stage of the female down here. It's just the most surreal thing. Part 2, not the face. So this, the face-biting mussel. So I didn't know this beforehand, but a lot of mussels have a parasitic larval stage where they need to kind of grow in a fish's gills. So basically the kind of mussel will release like a big cloud of larvae into the water, which attaches to the fish's gills or whatever. But the fish have the mussels rather have become rather good at sort of tricking the fish into getting really close and kind of just getting a face full of the larvae, or in this case, just getting their faces bitten. So they'll sit there, and the mantle will pop out, and it looks quite pretty and striking. The fish come close, and then the valves of the mussel clamp the fish's face with some serious force, such to the extent that they've only got one species that they could do it with because they just obliterate any other fish they come across. But basically, once it's grabbed the fish, it just squirts the living crap out of this fish with its larvae and then lets the fish go, and the fish is like, oh, and he just swims off. But I remember reading some research about it, and it was it has one host, and it just crushes the head of other fish species that it comes across. It's a little beastie looking. Look at this bit down here of the kind of clawy bits. There's this poor fish with his little snoot stuck in a mussel. But I thought I'd continue this just a little bit. This is a kind of a different species, but there are actual mussels that pretend to be fish to attract these fish towards them. This is a mussel. These two are pretending to be fish, so that these fish will come close and get a face full of larvae. It's just completely surreal.
So this is on to, I've got a couple of slides in here. So this is the tongue-eating louse. So what this is it's an isopod, and it lives on the blood of teleost fish. It was sort of thought to exist in the Eastern Pacific, but has been now found all over the world. And what it does is it specifically parasitizes deep snappers and groupers. So what it does is it proceeds to, it goes over to the fish and it basically eats its tongue. And once its tongue's gone, it proceeds to then clamp on to the stub where the tongue is and live off the blood of this fish, acting as like a prosthetic tongue, which is kind of cool, a bit grim. So they've been known to be hermaphrodites, and not only do they feed off its blood, but tissue as well. And so there was an experiment done which found that in about a 150, a sample of 150, about 4% of them were infected with this parasite. And there's the little guy sort of in the mouth. Cool.
I love them so much.
They're so weird and just.
Oh, this is you again.
And so this is the green-banded broodsac. So what it is it's a parasitic flatworm that makes its way into snails, and so it kind of travels up to the eye stalk, and it makes it wiggle, like a maggot or something, which attracts birds, because part of its life cycle takes place within birds. So what it does is it causes the poor kind of confused snail to have its eye mimic that of a maggot, and the bird comes down and eats it. And this allows the parasitic flatworm to lay its eggs inside the bird, which are then deposited in bird poo, and then another poor unfortunate snail sort of comes along and mumbles around through there and picks up the new parasites. And if you click through, there should be some quite cool photos. So the top.
We should really give
photo
some warning for these. I forgot that's what we said we were going to do, and then we didn't. But
the top one is sort of what it looks like, and sort of how it shows the sort of striking colours that are going to pick up any bird's attention, which is quite. And
it does. It moves up and down, doesn't it?
Yeah, it kind of wiggles, which is quite cool because it's sort of, I mean, it kind of takes control of this a part of the snail's body, which is pretty neat, to be honest. Yeah.
All right then. Part 3, a sting in your step. So this is about parasitoid wasps. I think I was going to look up the definition of this, but a parasitoid, if I remember rightly, is the adult is free living and non-parasitic. It just kind of wobbles around, flies around, they'll pollinate, do whatever. But when it comes time to reproduce, they have a larval stage that is an obligate parasite. So this wasp will lay its egg in its host. The host, then the larvae develop inside the host and then come out. The host dies usually, but I have an example in here where it doesn't. But the host almost always dies. Lovely things. So, the emerald cockroach wasp is a wasp that keeps zombie slaves. So, this wasp, when it finds a cockroach, it stings it twice. And this first sting will paralyze the cockroach. And then it uses that time to sting venom directly into the cockroach's brain, accurately into a specific ganglia. And this basically interrupts its free will. Like it probes with its stinger for this exact ganglia. Like there was a study where they removed this ganglia from the cockroach, and then the wasp has its stinger in looking for it. It looks for this one specific part of the brain. But basically what this does is it basically lobotomizes the cockroach. The cockroach just becomes really subdued and chilled out. You can do whatever to it. It just kind of sits there. The wasp then clips its antenna and walks it back to the burrow where it lays an egg on it. And then this kind of the larvae develops outside of the cockroach, just kind of slips on its leg for a while, and then it goes inside and finally kills it. But basically, the venom also causes the cockroach to compulsively clean itself, and the larvae also produce chemicals to keep the cockroach clean and kind of kill a load of diseases that come inside and sort of mess with it as it's just sitting there and not eating. It's basically just like putting the cockroach in the fridge to make it last longer, but it just kind of makes the cockroach last longer and let the larvae get that much more out of it. It's really interesting. So there's some photos of this. It's not too mank. Yeah, you can see it's a very, very pretty wasp as well. So the next one, the caterpillar bodyguard wasp. I love this one. So basically, the adult wasp will lay its eggs inside of the caterpillar. You know how it is. The larvae go inside, and then the adult larvae emerge. But the caterpillar doesn't die when this happens. So the larvae then, because they haven't killed the host and pupated inside of the host, they need to pupate outside to become adult wasps. That's the problem when you don't pupate inside. But this also lets the wasp lay way more eggs inside of the caterpillar. Because if you've got like, like this cockroach and there's one, this you can lay tons of eggs. Basically, so before they leave this caterpillar, they'll release chemicals that take over this caterpillar's brain. And basically, then the larvae then will spin their cocoons to kind of pupate, and then the caterpillar spins the cocoon that he would have made to, gestate himself in over these caterpillars to further protect them, because again, they have to there's this high risk of being parasitized by other wasps when they're out there, become the same fate of this caterpillar. So the caterpillar has its brain taken over and then acts like a bodyguard, and it protects the larvae until it dies itself. So it basically protects the larvae with its life until it starves to death because it's had its brain taken over by these wasps. And it's awesome. Yeah, I had a YouTube video there, but I haven't loaded that up already because I suck. But I'll come back to it at the end. So yeah, this is the wasp being stung. And this is the caterpillars guarding the pupating larvae. So this is the third wasp. I get 3 of these. So this is a spiderweb wasp. It's a tropical wasp that it gets spiders. So they can either just fly directly and get it, or I really like this other way they do it, where because they're quite big and they'll pretend to be stuck in the spider's web to draw the spider out. And then once the spider's coming close, they'll just pop out and then they'll give it a sting. The wasp then lays an egg on the spider's abdomen. The larvae develops on the outside of the spider, and it will go inside and finish it off when it's dead. But before it dies, the larvae makes the spider spin a completely different web that's specifically designed to protect the developing larvae from predators. It suspends it it's different. It's not sticky. All of this lovely stuff. And there's the picture of that. There's this larvae on the outside of the spider here. It's quite big. But the spiders, of course, have its mind taken over here. So this is the web that they'll spin. If you look, it's very distinctively different to a normal orb weaver web. And this bit in the middle here is where the spider will crawl to and eventually die, and then the larvae will pupate inside of this big mess of web here, rather. Oh, that's very cool. This is you again, Rosie. Part 4, get out of my head. So
this is potentially my favourite parasite, Toxoplasma gondia, otherwise referred to as toxoplasmosis. So this is a protozoan parasite, and what it does is it infects warm-blooded animals, and quite often infects cats. And it lives in the gut of your domestic cat. And so what it does is part of its life cycle, they lay their eggs sort of, and that'll kind of, they want to transfer as, basically they want to increase the cat's health. So they send out these chemicals in the cat's shit, which when it comes in contact with, say, a mouse or a small bird, the chemicals basically fuck up the mouse, or should I be swearing? No, it's fine.
Just the passions coming through there.
Basically fuck up the brain of the mouse or small bird, so it makes them more likely to approach the cat, and they lose their fear. And so this means that the cat is able to eat more, and it benefits the parasite. Here's the kind of cool thing: this can also infect us. When humans have been infected with toxoplasmosis, it slows down their reaction times. It makes men more aggressive, and there is loads of studies, I think. Basically, it means you're more. Most people who have been in a car crash have been infected by toxoplasmosis due to the slowing down of reaction times. Also, it increases the risk of schizophrenia. Cats can be problematic, but that you can take a course of drugs that would clear it up, but you've kind of got to get it diagnosed first, and that's kind of the hard part. So you can see the small photos at the bottom are what it looks like, and the photo at the top is the CDC's life cycle of it.
It's rather...
It's pretty grim, but it's pretty cool how it can just muck up the biochemistry of your brain and of animals' brains.
Yeah, and isn't it like a third of people are infected by it or something?
It's a bloody huge statistic, really. It really is. And a lot of people don't know, and it's just sort of a thing of having a cat. You may be more likely to die in a motorcycling accident. And then there is the brain-eating amoeba. So what this is, it's an amoeba that's found in freshwater springs, usually sort of in warm areas, and they have a few different sort of life stages. So you've got the cyst form, which is a single layer wall with a nucleus in, and this is sort of like how it survives. Sort of, it's not quite a hibernation stage, but you could kind of think of it like that. And then you have the trophozoite form, which is the infective stage. So it's sort of when it dives into and how it moves into people and stuff. And then you have the flagellate form, which has two flagella and allows it when it is exposed to a change in ionic concentrations, it then transforms into the trophozoate form in order to infect people, because it means it's been taken up by somebody. So this is usually found in like hot springs and stuff, and be careful when you go swimming in hot springs, because it travels up your nose, and then there's a change in ionic concentration, so it transforms into the trophozoate phase and travels up the olfactory cell axon and gets into the brain and begins to break down the tissue. And it's usually kind of sort of associated with death.
Usually, the brain being kind of destroyed is usually associated with death. I found
a couple of articles saying that there was this one child who survived miraculously survived the brain-eating amoeba, but it's usually death. But again, set of drugs, if you can pick it up quickly, you can. Set of drugs will clear you up pretty well.
I think that's what's happened to me, to be honest, because I went to Iceland and we went to a hot spring, and I was so good. I was just swimming around under the water, and then I came back up and I watched some Tom Scott video, talking about hot springs and brain-eating amoebas, and you're not supposed to put your head underwater and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happened to me since uni, to be honest. That's what's doing me in. I'm going to show you some photos of that. They're not too bad.
Yeah, they're pretty chill. It's you've just the sort of top one is sort of what it looks like, and to be honest, it's kind of cool, and I think it's something that people don't really talk about much. As sort of how
it's super duper rare.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't
never put your head underwater again. Also, don't suck water up your nose when you go swimming.
Yeah.
Don't drown. It's
usually fine, and going swimming in Cornwall's probably chill because it's not warm.
It's the sea.
But it's usually the freshwater springs.
Freshwater hot springs.
Yeah. Back to you.
Part 5. This is our pesky protozoans. So I know that there's been a lot of protozoans already, but I kind of needed a little space for this. So this next one, back here, this is a really interesting one, kind of medically. It's kind of the dengue killer and the sex change parasite, I've called it here, but it's basically one of the most prevalent parasites in the world. Something like 40 to 66% of insects are infected by it. It's basically this bacteria that kind of lives inside of the cells of the insect. So there's something kind of vaguely complicated, I guess, around this that you have to kind of get your head around, is that it messes with the way that insects reproduce. So if you're an infected male who has Wolbachia, and there's an uninfected female, your eggs don't hatch. So you basically can't reproduce if you're an infected male and the female isn't infected. But if the female is infected, or the male and the female are infected, then the eggs do develop, but these eggs will then carry the parasite to the next generation. So this is really smart. So this can spread through entire populations rapidly. But what is interesting about this is it basically reduces the amount of dengue, Zika, malaria, stuff like that, especially dengue and Zika, and basically means that insects, mosquitoes rather, that carry that can't transmit dengue and Zika and stuff like that. So this isn't normally found in nature. Mosquitoes don't carry the Wolbachia in nature, so they've lab infected them. So what you can do is infect mosquitoes with Wolbachia and then release them out into the wild, and then this parasite will just spread through the population, and it has the potential to just reduce or end mosquito diseases. I was reading about it. It's really quite interesting. So because these females always produce infected offspring, if the parasite manipulates this sex determination, then you can have way more. You eventually end up with most of the population carrying it, less kind of ability to carry these diseases. There's also a study, which is why I call it the sex change parasite. It's not really. It sort of manipulates the sex determination in embryos to produce more females, because if you remember, the females always kind of pass on the parasite. The males only pass it on if the female has it as well. So the parasite has an advantage if it's always female. So it will actually mess with them and make them produce more females, which is insane.
That's really cool.
It's really cool.
And it's a absolutely brilliant solution to the diseases, because I've come across a lot of studies that
it's only been
saying,
short scale.
let's just fucking kill all the mosquitoes,
and
which is a terrible ecological idea.
It would limit the ecological impact. They can still go and suck blood,
which
it's really cool.
Brilliant. Yeah, no,
it hopefully it leads somewhere. I was reading about it. You can look it up if you want. It's just the first thing that turned up when I searched for it. So counteracting that, I thought I'd just go into malaria a little bit, just like a short one, because most of us have seen this before. So insect vector introduces the plasmodium to an animal host. Plasmodium is the kind of microbe that causes malaria, if you like. So this is really smart, the way this parasite works. So it travels to the liver and hides from the immune system. It enters the cells and it reproduces, and it kind of changes form to this form that goes for red blood cells. And when it pops out of the liver, it takes some of the cell membrane to disguise itself as a part of the body's kind of part of the body, so that the immune system doesn't target it. And then it goes around, wrecks through all the red blood cells, causes anemia, loads of nasty stuff. And then something bites you again, and then the vector cycle continues. It's really simple, but it's just a brutal disease. I just thought it was kind of interesting the way it works. So it's part 6. This is the wormy goodness. There's a couple of icky things in this one, and I'll explain them when we get to it. So this is Riboiri? No, that's the worst pronunciation. Ribiroya? Kind of sounds a bit. That sounded a bit Scooby-Doo. Ribena? Basically, it's a flatworm. Platyhelminth, grows and reproduces asexually inside of I think this is snails, actually, here. I think I've got it wrong. Yeah, it is. It's snails. My bad. So it basically, it infects so much different stuff, this kind of flatworm. It's insane. So it starts off, reproduces asexually inside of snails, castrating them just for the sake of it. It exits the snails in this second form, the swimming form, and it will enter vertebrates, usually fish, sometimes tadpoles, because I mean it's a flatworm, it doesn't really know the difference. But tadpoles, because they grow into frogs, have these tiny little buds that will grow into legs, and they are really, really easy entry points for this. So, because it's wedged itself in the legs, as it grows, it causes deformities in these legs. So they can have forked legs, they can have no legs, they can have a stupendous amount of legs. They say a study found that they had 12, the most they had, which is just ridiculous, those poor froggies. It's thought to produce chemicals that interrupt leg development. But the reason why, it's still kind of up for debate, but they reckon that the reason why this is happening is because these frogs are crap at swimming. If you've got no legs or 10 legs, you suck at swimming. So you're more likely to get eaten by birds. So then when they're in the birds, they reproduce sexually, and then it excreted in poo, which the snails love to eat, which starts the process all over again. And that is a weird life cycle. Yeah, so there's 4 different forms. I'm going to show you some photos of it now. This is frogs with a load of legs, so if that's not your jig, then... but just, they got a lot of legs. It really does some weird stuff to them, these poor froggies. They kind of look like they're running in a cartoon, these poor little things. But yeah.
This spider on them.
Yeah, they kind of look like a spider, like spider frogs.
I think the snail cycle seems to be basically
snails just like poo.
They happen to be like all of the life, like part of at least one part of like half of the parasite life cycles for most things. It's weird.
Those poor snails. So this next one, hairworms. This next one is probably the mankiest thing that I put on here. So again, I'll break down what it is. I've sensationalized it and called it the suicide worm because it basically is, but it doesn't affect us, lucky enough. So the adults are free living in water, but they have this juvenile stage that is parasitic. So it can be over 2 meters long inside of an insect. So those poor little things. So the adults will lay an egg in the water. The larvae hatch and they'll cling to vegetation. And they'll wait for like an arthropod, insects, maybe a crustacean, something like that, to it's misspelling there again. But basically, they'll wait and they'll cling to whatever goes near the bodies of water. So they'll get out of the water that way. So the larvae develops inside of the host, sometimes taking up the entire body cavity. You can have loads of them in one thing, and they're really quite mank. So because their hosts aren't in water, but the larvae needs to be in water, what it does is it releases chemicals that basically forces the host to just jump into the nearest body of water it finds and die. So the worm just forces the host to kill itself. It jumps into the water and drowns. And then when the host is dead, the adult worm just slowly comes out of the host and then just breeds with other worms in the water. I'm going to show you some photos of this now, and this is kind of mank, I'll be honest. So these are the worms coming out. It's not pretty. Those poor things. Those poor things. So, fungal yumminess. This is the last category of stuff I'm going to cover. It's 2 of these. So this is something I had no idea this existed before I wrote this talk. This is one of the most interesting ones that I've found. I love this so much. So basically, the spores will land on a mustard plant. Then this fungus will grow and it will siphon the plant's nutrients. But when it comes time to reproduce, the fungus sterilizes the plant so it can't grow its own flowers and reproduce. Then it forces the plant to produce like flowers by kind of contorting the leaves. It makes it grow leaves, not flowers, leaves that are bright yellow and they resemble flowers. And the actual these resemble flowers to such a close regard for insects. They literally they're called pseudoflowers, and they actually make the leaf produce nectar. They make the leaves kind of like squeeze like sugar and all of this other stuff. They actually smell like flowers. They fluoresce under UV light just like a flower would, but it's a leaf. It's a fungus making a leaf look like a flower, and it's just insane. So then, as you'd expect, pollinators visit this pseudoflower, and then they get the spores on them, and they'll transfer them to other plants. So then the other plants will get infected. So it reproduces sexually by having insects go between these pseudoflowers. And that is insane. And then this has this other stage where it goes from the flower, the pseudoflower, to just grass. And then the grass then produces airborne spores that infect more mustard plants. I'm going to show some photos of this, isn't mine? So those are leaves that have been contorted into looking like a flower, you can see, and these little dots here are the fungus. And I love it so much. So the next one, couldn't be a parasite talk without mentioning cordyceps, could it? So this is a fungus that affects many types of insects, not just ants, even though that is the kind of one that you usually expect. So infected ants will become zombies. The fungus will cause them to just deviate from the path, from whatever task they're doing, and just climb high up to a position like a tree or kind of an overpass to where they are, and it will clamp with its jaws. It's the death grip, it's called. And this, basically, it will just die. And then the fruiting body of the fungus, this kind of bit that spreads the spores, just emerges really slowly from the ant's head. And then the spores then infect the other ants, and it can just kill entire colonies. It's insane. I have some photos of this kind of fungus coming up stuff. So here we are.
Ants have evolved some sort of mechanism to try and like get rid of it. So I've come across the idea that I think it was that they basically kill anything that they avoid and kill anything that seems to be infected by it.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool as well. Yeah. Just to the sort of arms race.
Yeah, I know. I was sort of, because you'd expect it's sort of these checks will stop something almost like, you know, in a field where you've just got like a load of bracken and it just takes over everything. This kind of will stop something taking over like a whole rainforest. It's just because if you've got too big, then you just all get took out by one big load of fungus. And look at this, the tarantulas, and apparently the most common actual thing is locusts and kind of grasshoppers and stuff, more than ants, something like that. I reckon the ants is probably the most common though, because that's the one you see the most. Yeah. But something weird I noticed whilst Googling this is that people, it seems to be some sort of Chinese medicine, I think, or some health food, like these maggots or like these larvae that have been infected by cordyceps, and it's like supposed to be really good for you, but who knows?
Interesting. I'm not trying it.
Yeah, Google it if you want. It's just kind of like a mushroom coming out of a caterpillar. They're really, really expensive.
I don't want to be honest. I don't want that on my search history.
Yeah. All right, but that was your lot.
Yeah. Hopefully that was enjoyable and you learned some.
Anybody want to know anything?
Cool stuff about
run through
parasites.
Some questions.
Why would they want to be a fungi? Like, what is the benefit to the parasite if they're fungi?
Oh, what's the benefit for being anything? It's just, why would you want to be a fungus? I don't know. I want to be a mushroom.
I think mushroom would be pretty damn cool.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you mean sort of in the sort of with the cordyceps and stuff?
Yeah.
Being a mushroom.
So like the insects.
Sorry, I misunderstood. I think It's what you're on about. Why would there be a mushroom coming out of it?
Yeah.
Basically because a fungus. I kind of mentioned this in my mushroom talk a while back, but basically a fungus exists inside of whatever substrate it's in. So if you think, you know what a fairy ring is? Have you seen one of those before? Basically, fungus exists as this mass of sort of fibers under the ground that kind of get nutrients from whatever they're stuck in. So if it's the ground, it'll be like nutrients from the soil, stuff like that. But when it becomes time to reproduce, they produce these mushrooms or these fruiting bodies like you see on these ants here, or like a mushroom in the forest. And then these mushrooms will then release spores, which are the reproductive kind of stage. And then these spores will land on other, so they'll land either in the grass or on another ant. And then these fungal colonies will then establish themselves there. So basically, the spores will just land on another animal, and then they'll grow, and then the whole thing starts again. It's like swallowing a seed and then kind of a plant growing inside of you.
Have you seen any of the videos of like mold slime and stuff? Well, it's sort of very similar principle. They kind of clump together, make these sort of like stems, and then just spore off. Because I guess it's the most evolutionarily best, sort of the best method for getting your spores out, I guess.
I'm going to find that video for the...
Bear in mind, it probably won't play with sound, I don't think.
It doesn't need to have sound. It's just someone talking over it. I'm going to pop up for not the mag bit where there's a million maggots coming out of a caterpillar.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Emily just said, wasn't the Lyra flower the one
spelling,
that closed down the Disney water park? I haven't got a clue.
Oh no, the brain-eating amoeba.
Oh
yeah,
yes.
yeah, it did. It
Yes.
did, yeah.
Yes.
And some kid got it from Disneyland. And it shut it down for a while.
Shit.
Yeah, I remember that.
mean,
yeah.
I read a lot about sort of sometimes it does dwell in like swimming pools because large body of warm water, you know.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to? So it's sort of you can get it in like unchlorinated, unproperly chlorinated swimming pools, which is clearly Disneyland was trying to cut some costs. You know, never a good idea. Don't do that.
Yeah. Can I show this video from earlier? This caterpillar. I'm going to show it. I think it should hopefully not. I think I got past the gross maggoty bit, but it might be some. So sorry if there is. This is the this caterpillar. If we look at it, and then this is it spinning its silk over the pupating wasp larvae. And then if I show you, where is it?
I have to say, it's a godsend you've muted fucking National Geographic.
It's just American, isn't it? But this is, look, those are wasps trying to parasitize the larvae. This is the caterpillar fighting them off, or it doesn't really matter if it gets stung; it's going to die. This is it fighting off the wasps that are trying to sting the larvae.
We just had someone attempt to get into the to ask the knitted.
And then I'll let them in.
I guess. Don't worry.
Are they in? I think they're in.
I don't think they did get in.
Oh, right, well.
Well, it's whoops.
All right. Any more questions? Anyone?
Yeah.
No. Oh, it was very interesting and quite, I mean, interesting.
Yeah, we tried to avoid the gross stuff, even though I kind of got so passionate that I kind of forgot that we were supposed to say beforehand.
I mean, we beforehand we actively did go, yeah, let's not do a fluke worm sort of thing, or that one actually is quite grim.
Yeah, we got rid of the grim ones because I don't. Everybody knows what a worm coming out of someone's leg looks like, you know. I don't think we needed to do that again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're doing our course, you'll know what it looks like definitely anyway, because
Yeah.
believe Ben
And,
Raymond showed you.
Yeah, Emily's illustration.
Absolutely safe from all the grim stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
safe from the grim stuff. Yeah, I stopped sharing my screen.
Oh. Well. Yeah. Any other thoughts, comments? Thoughts, prayers, comments.
All right then, I might stop the recording.
Cool.
Thank you so